Nicholas Godejohn, or as many of you may know him as, Gypsy Rose's ex-boyfriend. Yes, the one that sent her mother to the afterlife to meet her maker. And I'm going to apologize in advance for using these euphemistic statements throughout this video, but unfortunately, Big Daddy YouTube showed up and basically told me that my content needed to be a little bit more family friendly, or they would continue to demonetize me and smack me across the face with the hammer of injustice. So here we are, using euphemisms. Anyway, for those of you who aren't super familiar with the Gypsy Rose incident that happened roughly 10 years ago, I will give you a very brief TLDR. So, Gypsy Rose was used by her mother, Blanchard, who had the illness known as Munchausen's by proxy, which sums up to mental health condition where you pretend that someone within your care is sick when they aren't. So Dee effectively pretended that Gypsy Rose had so many different types of illnesses that she couldn't walk, that she needed a feeding tube. She even convinced doctors that she was sick with so many different various illnesses, and she was being medicated and treated for them, even to a point where her teeth were falling out. So to most people from the outside looking in would see this as a very, very potent form of child abuse towards Miss Gypsy Rose. And as a result, she met this guy named Nicholas Godejohn, who we're talking about today. And together, they killed Gypsy's mother, Dee Blanchard, in her sleep. Afterwards, they went to a nearby restaurant where they got themselves some delicious post-murder breakfast, whatever it was at that time, and then they were later caught by police, brought in, questioned, and during the interrogations, Gypsy kind of lied multiple times about Nicholas, saying that this was all his idea, that, you know, she didn't even know what was going to happen, that when he showed up at her house, she had no idea that he was going to unalive her mother. This turned out to be a load of hot garbage because evidence showed very clearly that Gypsy is the one that presented this idea and that she pushed for it, and she effectively manipulated Nicholas into carrying out this deed because he was the one to stab and unalive Dee. He was sentenced on counts of first-degree murder for life in prison without the possibility of parole. Gypsy, however, was convicted of second degree and served a sentence of 8 years total. It was 10 years, but she got a shorter sentence in the end. And it's a head-scratching thing for a lot of people as to why Nicholas got such a harsh sentence. Yes, he is the one that physically carried it out, but at the same time, Gypsy was the one that planned it. So she was the one that premeditated it, but he carried it out, which is really, really bizarre to think about because first-degree murder involves premeditation, planning. And yes, he did partake in that planning as well, but so did Gypsy. But again, they let her off easy with that second-degree charge and conviction. This decision has drummed up a lot of controversy. It's extremely convoluted as to whether or not Nicholas Godejohn really deserved that life sentence. Now, what you need to understand about Nicholas is that he is severely autistic, according to psychologists. And it was even presented that he perhaps has the mental maturity of a 10-year-old, which I don't know exactly how true that is, but that is something that has been stated by professionals about him. So given these credentials, if you will, it does make you wonder whether or not he could be fully held responsible for his actions and whether his sentence was in fact justified, and if maybe instead he should have been put in some sort of mental institute for treatment and rehabilitation and seeing what the professionals could possibly do to help him as opposed to just incarcerating him for the remainder of his life. Now, there's a lot of people that put the tinfoil hat on and say that Gypsy manipulated him to a very, very great degree and that she should be held significantly more responsible, and that perhaps that she even lied about the abuse she faced in Dee's care, which I'm gonna go ahead and debunk that right now. This is some flat earther level conspiracy nonsense in the sense that Gypsy definitely was a victim of abuse for certain. She wasn't riding around that wheelchair for fun. She was placed in there by Gypsy's mother, who swore on a cross up and down that she was extremely sick and ill, couldn't walk, couldn't eat, had to use a feeding tube, all of that. She even shaved Gypsy's hair to make it look like she was going through chemotherapy, so people would give them sympathy, give them money, resources, everything that they needed. But this video isn't about the specifics of Gypsy's side of this. We are only interested at the moment in Nicholas Godejohn's. So firstly, we're going to look at some of the interrogation and some of the words that he spoke during his time with the police, as well as the text conversations between Gypsy and Nicholas leading up to the murder.
You know, we spoke to her and for a long time, and I'm kind of thinking maybe she loves you a little more than you love her, because you're sitting here telling me things that I know aren't true, and then she's sitting here telling me things that are true. And if you really love her, I don't think you would want her in that situation, okay? The situation that she's in right now. And so we're going to go down two paths here, okay? And that is just you're going to have to be honest with me. Because if you love her, if you love Gypsy, then you're not going to let Gypsy get in trouble without you being there to help her, okay? So what you need to know is that Gypsy told us everything.
Okay.
We didn't talk to Gypsy all this time and not get everything.
Okay.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
And so, Nick, I want you to do the honorable thing, okay? For Gypsy and for your family, okay? Because we know what happened. And I want to give you the opportunity to start over and to tell the truth, okay? And the truth is not what you've told me.
How much have I told you to believe is the truth?
So this is obviously a very common manipulation tactic that interrogators use, where they kind of try to appeal to what matters to you by saying, oh, Gypsy loves you more because she told us the truth. You know, it's kind of like shooting on the leg and basically forcing him to speak the truth. And on top of that, obviously she told us everything, which is another very common tactic, because a lot of times they will say this when they haven't gotten squat from the other person, because they know that the other person is going to try to protect themselves and say what they need to say, so that, you know, they hopefully, when being presented in front of a judge, look to be a bit more honest because they told the truth during their interrogation. And plus, I mean, if the other person already said everything, you don't know what they said. The jig is up. You know, you have to come clean in those instances. And this worked like a charm against Mr. Godejohn here.
Okay? Because it's not fair. It's not fair to Gypsy for her to be honest and you to lie, okay? So what I want to know is can you tell me this first?
Okay.
Did Gypsy know that you were going to kill her mother?
Honestly, she asked me to.
Okay. So Gypsy knew you were going to do it because Gypsy asked you to.
Yes.
Why did she ask you to do that?
Because she felt it was her only way to be with me.
Okay. She felt like if you killed the mom, then that's the only way she could be with you.
Yeah.
Do you know the mom's name?
I don't know her real name. All I know is that she goes by Dee Dee.
Dee Dee. Okay. So, has Gypsy asked you to kill anyone else?
No.
Okay. She just wants you to kill her mom.
Yes.
Okay. And how did Gypsy ask you to do that? Did she ask you to do that in a text message, on a Facebook, or in person, or something different?
Well, it was more than once. I mean, you had Facebook. We would talk about it on there. We would talk about it even on Texas.
Okay. And what kind of things would Gypsy tell you that she wanted you to do?
She wanted. The thing is that I know she loves her mom a lot. I know she does.
Yeah.
I had I was up here with her, and she felt guilty about the whole situation. I had to make sure she was safe. And meaning, like, I had to make sure she felt like she could be comforted by me.
You. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because, and then the truth is, okay, I'll admit it. I did actually stab her mom. I will admit it.
I know. Okay.
So what's really interesting, again, about the sentencing of both of them is that Gypsy Rose got second-degree murder, which is murder with malicious intent, just without the premeditation. So if, for instance, you're driving down the road and a person walked into the street and you decided, you know what, today's the day I'm going to run somebody over, and you go ahead and you do that, that would be considered second-degree murder because it was intentional. You decided to do it in that moment, and you went ahead and did it. There was no pre-planning. You weren't planning on murdering that particular person, but when you saw them, you decided, let's go for it. Now, with Godejohn, he got first-degree murder, which involves planning, which means you thought about it for days, weeks, who knows how long, and you planned this moment, and then you carried it out as intended. That is what first degree is, and that is the biggest sentence you can get. Now, again, it's extremely confusing because Gypsy got second degree, even though she was involved in the planning, and she isn't even the one that physically her mother, so I don't know exactly how a judge came to this ruling. It seems very confusing. Is that, well, whatever judge may have thought that Gypsy was a victim in this and therefore should get a lighter sentence. I'm not exactly certain. So I actually have the reasoning for why Gypsy got that plea deal and basically the second degree charge or conviction instead of first degree. And basically what we got here is Greene County Prosecutor Dan Patterson told the news leader after Tuesday's hearing he believes he could have secured first degree conviction in this case, meaning Gypsy Blanchard will have to spend the rest of her life in prison, but he did not believe that was fair because of the abuse Gypsy Blanchard suffered at the hand of her mother. He said he felt like 10 years in prison, the minimum sentence for second degree murder conviction, was more appropriate. When you look at this case, it's a murder, and it's a first degree murder, Patterson said, but it's also one of the most extraordinary, unusual cases we have seen. Mike Stanfield, Gypsy Blanchard's attorney, said he was able to uncover decades worth of that Dee Blanchard inflicted on Gypsy Blanchard as part of an elaborate fraud scheme. Essentially, Gypsy's mother was holding her a prisoner, Stanfield said. Her mother would not allow her to spend any time alone with any other human being. Her mother, when they went to the doctor, did all the talking. When the judge asked Gypsy Blanchard on Tuesday how far she went in school, she replied, second grade. Gypsy Blanchard's boyfriend, co-defendant Nicholas Godejohn, 27, still facing a first-degree murder charge in connection with the he is scheduled to go on trial in November. This was obviously years ago. But that sums it up. Pretty much the prosecutor felt bad for Gypsy and thought, this kind of, in a way, was a defense of herself. Like, she was abused for so long, her education didn't go beyond second grade. You know, like, you need to have some leniency for some forgiveness. Now, with Godejohn, a lot of people, as I said before, argue that he was manipulated into this. He also told the full truth, and if she was going to get a lesser sentence for this, then why not him? Now, I'm going to give you my personal opinion on this. It is extremely convoluted. But in his mind, he was rescuing someone that he loved from an abuser, somebody that was oppressing her, that was keeping her as a prisoner. And so if Gypsy pretty much got the, well, she was basically defending herself against an abuser plea deal, then I just feel like naturally for Mr. Godejohn, he would get something similar. The helping the person defending themselves against somebody that was abusing them, because the fact of the matter is what Dee was doing to Gypsy was inhumane, extremely illegal, and harmful in ways that I can't even communicate to you. Do I think that their course of action should have been to murder Gypsy's mother? No, absolutely not. I think there are various other ways that they could have escaped Gypsy's mom. They could have just left, just as they did after it. They could have just left and cut all communication. And as I say that, I realize that that probably would have been easier said than done, because if I'm not mistaken, I think Dee did have power of attorney over Gypsy. Just the power of attorney thing would have made things more complicated, not impossible, but more complicated, because Gypsy would have needed to understand that she could revoke the power of attorney from her mother, which, with only having a second grade education and the only person who she could confide in and learn from being her boyfriend with the maturity of a 10-year-old, it seems very difficult that she could have gone down that route, honestly. But again, turning to murder, probably not the best solution. I mean, there had to be somebody that she could reach out to, somebody that she could talk to, that she could find between the two of them to figure out a way out of this that wasn't murder her mother. Now, later on in the interrogation, Mr. Godejohn also admits that Gypsy was the one that purchased the knife and provided it to him to commit this act. She purchased it and gave it to him, that he didn't even bring his own weapon, that she was already prepared. This, again, was her planning. Now, briefly, we're gonna look at the text conversations exchanged between them and then wrap this up. So first off, let me just say there are a lot of texts here. This video is an hour and a half long of text messages between them, but I'm just gonna show you guys the ones that are relevant to them planning Dee Dee's. All right, so this is the earliest that I could find for in the conversation about unaliving Gypsy's mother begins. So Gypsy says, "I hope so, hun. I'm shaking. I'm nervous. I guess it's the if it all goes okay," talking about unaliving her mother. And then Mr. Godejohn responds, "Baby, it will, and you better the not just romantic wife of mine, but also my twin flame female daughter soulmate that you were meant to be." "I am, Daddy," she responds, "just as a backup. If it doesn't go right, run out of the house as fast as you can, hon." "Baby, there is no option. He is going to finish her no matter what that is, how he is." It's very hard to read these messages, I'll be honest with you. But that's what Mr. Godejohn says in response to Gypsy, and then she says, "Okay, darling, he is brave. I respect and admire that." By he is referring, they are referring to Nicholas, his alter ego, his murderous, evil side, if you will. Just as Ruby is Gypsy's evil side. So that's what they're talking about when they say he, or refer to themselves in this weird way. So Gypsy said, "How's the bed? Is it soft, hun?" And he responds, "Honey, you forgot, though, he is ruthless, and his hatred of her will force her to die, hun." And defendant says, "You'll enjoy it." Defendant being Nicholas Godejohn. She asks him, "What will you be wearing?" And he responds, "Something that will terrify her. It's all black, and my evil side picked the full outfit." And then she says, "Okay, I just have to remember it's still you." And he responds again, "Yes, just the darkness in me, dear, just like Ruby is the darkness in you, honey." And then she says, "But afterwards, we'll comfort each other." I'm going to skip over some of this, but she responds to this message saying, "And we'll be happy soon. After this night, we never bring it up." Now, this is the next day. This is June 10th, 2015. This is them doing their final planning before the deed that they're planning to carry out. So Gypsy says, "I know what you mean. It's getting close to time." She took her sleep aid pill, and he is nearby, about to get in a taxi and head over. She reminds him, "And once you're inside the house, we stay silent, not even a whisper, until after I open the bathroom door." "Okay, sir." He responds, "Dear, never underestimate his will to kill, and also give your address so I make sure I have the right one." And she responds, "I just want to say this thank you. You're my hero, and I will never leave you. I'm staying with you for eternity." And she gives him some details on the house, saying that there's a porch ramp. And she says that she said her last "I love you" to her, and that she is at peace, basically giving Mr. Godejohn the green light to come over and commit the act. And then I'm gonna stop here after this message, but she says, "You're the most important person to me, sweetie. You're like me. Fight for what you want and need." Now, there are significantly more manipulative messages leading up to this that I will uncover in my full deep dive into the whole Gypsy Rose Blanchard everything, which will probably be coming in the next couple of days, so be on the lookout for that. But anyway, that's it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Definitely consider purchasing my horror mystery book, The Elevator Man, link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. See you next time.